So I woke up in the back of an ambulance, and that's where God met me for the first time, and I heard his voice very clearly. He said, all right, you want to be who I called you to be, or do you want to be like your birth parents? And so like my whole thing, my entire life, I've always told myself I would never become my birth parents. I would never become a product of my environment. And so that for me was like the stepping stone to my relationship with Jesus. And so we've been 8 years sober, and
Wow.
we've been grinding, man, and finding that relationship with Jesus now. And he's absolutely turned everything upside down for the good.
All right. Hello and welcome to the Higher View podcast. This is the podcast for the creative, the outside thinker, and the believer. I'm Jonathan, your host, and today I have a very good friend of mine, my brother from another mother, Mr. Devin Ward.
My guy.
What's up, my brother?
Up, man?
How you doing, my brother?
I'm blessed, man.
Good.
How are
man.
you?
I'm good, man. It's good to have you on the show. We haven't hung out in a long time. We have not hung out in a long time. It's been, I think the last time I saw you was at the boxing gym.
Yeah.
It was like Christmas time, yeah?
Yep.
Christmas time, boxing gym. They had a party there. And that was the last time we saw each other. But before that, prior to that, we had went through retreat together. We had went through ministry together a little bit. And really just, we connected on a different level. I feel like me and you, we had a pretty tight bond. You know, I don't know. It was, honestly, it was like instantly brotherhood when me and you met. And I feel like you have that with a lot of guys. You just kind of have that personality. You connect really easy with men. But that's something that really stood out, to me, and just your personality, your heart posture of how you are. And like we were talking about a couple minutes ago, like it's just naturally who you are. Like you don't really try to do this. You don't really try to act like a certain person. Like your natural posture, your natural personality is just like the character of Jesus, and it's pretty dope. So I really admire that about you. But this is Devin Ward, guys. We're going to be speaking about just his story. Right now he is doing a roofing. He's in the roofing industry, and then talk a little bit about what you do on the side of that and what you're building up.
Yeah. So first off, I want to honor you. Thank you for having me here, man, and just opening up this space to just talk about and spread the word of Jesus, and just show people what an authentic brotherhood, friendship, love with one another looks like.
Thank you.
So I just want to honor you with that first.
Appreciate that.
But yeah, so I do a life coaching business, and it's not like most life coaching businesses where people just are saying, here, I have the answers for you. Here, I've gone through this. This is what I've learned. I can help you get through this. Well, yes, I've gone through the experiences of trauma and past hurts and stuff. Mm-hmm. I've learned that the only true healer is Jesus.
Right.
And so I incorporate scripture, I incorporate Bible verses, I incorporate prayer, Holy Spirit to just come into my life coaching sessions, to just help my clients and the people that God sends me, to give the wisdom that he has given me back to the world. Because like what God gives us is, if we hold on to it, it's selfish. And like, if you're selfish as a Christian, are you really a Christian?
Yeah.
Like we're called to serve and love one another.
That's tough right there.
Like we're called to serve and love one another. So if God has given you something through your pain and your hurt, and you're only holding it for yourself, who are you actually benefiting?
Right.
Are you really being what God has called you to be?
Yeah. That's awesome, dude. That's amazing. I know that's it's something it's a little recent for you. You said a couple months, yeah?
It's like 6-7 months.
6-7 months. That's really awesome to be able to get into that. I know you, speaking from experience, being able to like pour into other people's lives, you probably gain way more giving somebody else advice than they would ever receive from you. Like it's fulfilling work,
100%.
So that's awesome that you're into that. Proud of you for stepping into that. It's a big commitment to do to be able to commit to people and just their journey with life. Like taking on pretty much their issues that they're facing in life and what they're walking through, and walking them and taking their hand and walking with them. That's a big commitment, and it's very honorable of you to do. So I applaud you for that. Good job, brother.
Thank you.
We'll go into a little bit about your story. I know you kind of have one of the wilder stories that I've heard. And not in a bad way, it's an amazing, beautiful story.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time hearing your story, bro, like at House College, like I literally wept. And I can't say that I've done that many times. I wept at your story because it's just so heart touching, and I felt for you. I could feel the emotion that's behind your story. So let's go into a little bit about how you got to where you are today. How Jesus actually changed the person that you are, your core being, and where it all started.
Yeah. So I would say that the enemy has been scared of me since birth. Like that's my number one thing, is like, that's why I've gone through what I've gone through.
Yeah.
It's because he knew what God was going to call me to do.
It's powerful to know that.
Yeah. And it sucked walking through it, not knowing that, until I found that relationship with Jesus. But yeah, it was, so from childbirth, like my birth parents were drug addicts, alcoholics, beat me, abandoned me, all these things that a child should never walk through. And so therefore it's one of those things that with that, like there comes a lot of pain, a lot of childhood trauma, a lot of hurt. And then thank the Lord, I was put in the foster care system and adopted and raised by a single mom, and love my mom to death. Absolutely love her to death. But she's just one of those hardcore, like old style types of love where it's not very emotional. It's not very healing. It's more so like strict. This is how you need to do it. This is how you need to be. And so that also, with the weight of my childhood, kind of just had a lot of weight on me. So I played sports growing up and played college baseball, and that was like my identity release. That's where I found my identity. I didn't know Jesus yet. Right. I was in church all the time, but I didn't know Jesus. Yeah. I was a kid that was in the front pew, like dancing and shaking my booty, man, and just making the church laugh and being that wild child. But yeah, so college baseball, and had dreams of going pro. Obviously, every kid loves to have these big visions and dreams. And I had a shoulder-ending career injury that just really just ripped my heart out. I worked 18, 19 years to chase this dream, and it was just gone like that. Dang. And it was just one of those things that that's what my identity was in. So once you lose your identity, you don't know what the world is. Like, it's a completely different world for you when you lose that identity. And so I started turning to drugs, alcohol, sex, you name it. I was doing it, man. Yeah. Drinking half a handle a night of alcohol. Like, it was bad places. Living with atheists and just all this stuff that just wasn't going my way. But that's because I was lost in my identity. And unfortunately, it led to me having a seizure. Wow. Drinking alcohol and Xanax, mixed them, and
I did not know that.
So I woke up in the back of an ambulance, and that's where God met me for the first time, and I heard His voice very clearly. He said, "All right, you want to be who I called you to be, or do you want to be like your birth parents?" And so, like, my whole thing, my entire life, I've always told myself I would never become my birth parents. I would never become a product of my environment. And so that for me was like the stepping stone to my relationship with Jesus. And so we've been 8 years sober, and we've been grinding, man, and finding that relationship with Jesus now. And he's absolutely turned everything upside down for the good.
That is crazy, dude. I did not know that it went as far as having a seizure, bro.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So like when you had that moment and you said, you heard God for the first time, what was that experience like? Like, was it in the ambulance?
Yeah.
It was in the ambulance.
I was literally in like a neck collar in the ambulance, just laying down.
Dang, dude.
And like,
for real.
It was like literally when I woke up from the seizure. So like when you're having a seizure, like you're not conscious. And so they had to wake me up consciously. And that's like right when I woke up was like when the white light started to come up again. And that's when God like spoke to me. And it was almost like a moment where, because when I went to the hospital, like they couldn't confirm it was a seizure. They couldn't confirm what the heck it was. So I'm like, I was definitely on the ground, like convulsing, like something happened here. Yeah. So I don't know what it was. I just call it a seizure. Because if you're on the ground convulsing, I'm going to call it a seizure.
For sure. I mean, what else would it be? Yeah. How would they not label it as that?
And so for me, like, I just feel like I was just so divinely protected because I honestly smacked my head so hard on the ground because I just fell over and just started. I don't know, like I was told this, but I just fell over straight on concrete. Wow. I was actually a valet driver at the time, so I'm thankful that I was not driving a car.
Would have been a way worse situation. Crashed the Benz.
Yeah, that would have not been good. But yeah, man, it was a eye-opening moment, man, just to see that in my darkness, in my lowest point of my life, God chose me.
Wow.
But I had to choose him back.
Yeah.
It wasn't him, okay, I'm going to choose you. I'm going to pick you up and put you in this place. No, I'm giving you this call. I'm going to see what you're going to do with it. What's your choice? Because it's a choice. All of our life is a choice. You know, and it's one of those things that
I would argue to say that, you know, we all have a calling. You know, I think I don't know, it's kind of it's very broad to say that, because there's so many different situations and life scenarios, but I think if you know of God, if you have a life upbringing where God encounters you, then God's calling you to something. And I think what you just said, like God chose you, but you also chose him. There's another part to where like you have that encounter with God, but there's also the second following part where you have to answer the call.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's where a lot of people maybe have confusion or maybe have like questions of like, well, what's my purpose? You know, like I know of God, I know what he can do. I know, like, I've heard about the stories in the Bible, but like, how do I answer the call?
Yeah.
You know, like, and I think that's a big question that a lot of people do. And I think it's amazing what you're doing with like the mentoring side, the life coaching stuff, because you have that ability to have your story that you can share with people.
Yeah.
You know, and you have actually walked through answering that call. So that's amazing, dude. That's amazing that you can be able to share that with people.
Yeah.
But so growing up in that crazy household and then finding your identity through, you know, baseball or sports or whatever the case may be, maybe drugs or alcohol, whatever the case is, did you find it hard to kind of unwind after that situation, like with your emotions? Did you find it hard to unwind, or did you feel like there was maybe scales that were, it was hard, you know? Did you have like a shell on you? Yeah.
I was so hard. Like because I grew up with my mom, my adoptive mom, who she hasn't dealt with her emotions to this day.
Yeah.
And so like with that being said, like that's a rock of a heart. Like that's just so much shell around your heart.
And that's what was being taught to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it was one of those things, like I had all this trauma as a child. Like I didn't have anywhere safe to express that pain for 23 years. And it was a stare yourself in the face every single day and knock these chisels off of you. It wasn't easy. It wasn't something that I'm like, oh, I'm so excited to knock these chisels off of me today. It was, oh my gosh, you know? And it's one of these moments that you were broken so many times to get. Like I've always felt like when you have breakdowns, you create breakthroughs. So when something's broken in your world and you're feeling like the world is just breaking down, it's because God's trying to break through something new and create some space for something greater and bigger for you to walk into.
Yeah, that's good.
You know, and so there was, like you were saying, like there were so many scales that had to knock off. There were so many things that, like even in that time, like I would just run to things to try and numb myself for a little bit, because that's so much weight for someone to carry with not any support family wise.
Right.
And I didn't know how to create relationships with friends. So there was literally just me versus me and God. Like, and that's why like a lot of times I say it's me versus me, because at the end of the day, like God and me are the only two people who've had me. And at the end of the day, like I only answer to God. So I think that's a good thing, because it's, and I also really like feel in my spirit right now to talk about this. But one issue I always had growing up was, like I mentioned, I was raised by adopted mom. I never had a dad. I never had a father. So, there was one Father's Day weekend where I went to the house actually.
Yeah.
And God just met me so gently there. And he's like, I never gave you a father because I wanted to be your only dad. And I was like, wow. Like when you realize the love of a father like that, it's like, first off, no other father could beat him. Second off, he's never going to fail me.
Yeah.
So once you feel that love he has for you, like your world changes, your identity changes, your whole viewpoint of society changes, and how you treat and love others changes. Because I feel like I try to love people so well because I've never been loved properly, you know. But I've always found the identity that I need to be loved properly, but that's not the case. Nobody's ever going to love you properly. Yeah, the only person who is Jesus.
Yeah. There's I feel like, and I know this is maybe like kind of a hard thing to say, but I feel like it's such an advantage. I don't even think that's the right word, but in my eyes, in my opinion, I see it, and I never walked through this, but I see it as an advantage to not grow up with a dad and then see God as your first father.
Yeah.
Because now you don't have a distorted view of who God can actually be.
Yeah.
You know,
That's good.
your first meeting is actually with God, the one father that you actually should be looking up to constantly.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like, in a way, it's an advantage. You know,
Yeah.
obviously it's not, you know,
I would agree, bro.
It's not a good thing to grow up without a dad. You know, it's obviously a blessing to have a dad. You set grounds and foundation that is going to be needed in every boy's life.
Yeah.
You know, it's needed. But to be able to have that first encounter with, you know, who God's character actually is, now you have the ability to actually love and meet. And that's probably why you're able to walk in it so easily, because God was like the first dad that you actually met.
Yeah.
And that's amazing, dude. It's really cool, because I know a lot of people that I meet, and I've heard it so many times, like a lot of people see God as how their dad was.
Yeah.
And a lot of people walk through their lives trying to undo how their dad raised them so they can see God clearly. They can see how God actually is. And that's something that I was thinking about last night, because I think my parents, they were really, I grew up in like a Christian home. I grew up like knowing God. I knew of God.
Yeah.
And I can't say that I really experienced God in like a powerful way growing up. And I mean, no disrespect to like my parents. Like, I love my parents. I think they did an amazing job. They did great. Like, there's definitely, everybody's human, you know, and they may be listening, but everybody's human. We all make mistakes, and I don't blame anybody for any things that were missed or anything like that. You know, everybody's just trying to do their best.
Yeah.
But there is like times where I have to find the difference and the balance of like how God wants me to chase and how God wants me to be intimate, how God wants me to have a heart for actually Him and who He is. And I just didn't grow up having that.
Yeah.
I didn't grow up like chasing relationship. And that's why, like I've told you before, like having like connection with, especially like men, I've never seen it. It's kind of like absent to me. So I've had to implement that into my life, and I've had to like teach myself like what it actually looks like to have healthy relationships with people, with friends, and with brothers, with, you know, brothers from another mother.
Yeah.
So I've had to teach myself that, man. And it's definitely been a journey. But I think that's one thing that is so powerful to have in your life, like for just like a first step, like talking about like the scales that you had to like chip away. Community is like the best thing that you could do.
Yeah.
And me and Lex talk about it all the time, especially on the podcast. Like, community is your gateway, dude. Like, you have so many different doors that can open when you have community. You have so many different perspectives, people that can speak into your life, and it changes the game, man.
So good.
It changes the game.
Yeah. And talking about community, like that's something that was so hard for me to get into. Like with all these past traumas, like it was hard for me to trust people.
Yeah. That's the biggest thing.
It's hard for me, like as from a humanly worldly perspective, it's hard to let go of that hurt and to trust that there's something greater, because all you've known from humans is hurt. And so it takes boldness, it takes courage, and it takes strength. And it's what allows you to have Jesus come into you, because Jesus was the example of strength and courage and boldness, because He never wavered on His word, ever. And so when you are in a situation where you feel like the whole world has kind of isolated you, that's when it's time to step out and find something for yourself, because nobody else is going to do it for you. Like, God's got to also see that you're willing to put in the work to get to where you want to go.
Yeah.
He's not just going to say, here's a blessing because I love you. He might, but at the same time, he's got to see that you're willing to be obedient. You're willing to sacrifice.
Yeah.
And you're willing to be courageous for Him.
To have a yes.
Yeah.
You know? And that's another thing that, you know, we were talking earlier, like we were at the prison this past 2 weekends ago, like Easter Sunday. And
celebrate you for that, by the way. That's an awesome ministry you're doing.
It's amazing. It's an amazing experience. I would recommend literally anybody that I know to go do that. Like, even just to like be part of it, because it's amazing. It's an eye opener. It's an eye opener to see like the social status is at level 0. No one is better than you. It's all like level. Like, I see another guy in prison who's doing life, and they treat me the same way that they're going to treat anybody else in there. Like, I'm a brother to them. They're so happy to see me, and it's amazing. But one thing that I was talking about the simplicity of God, and just how simple God is, and how men usually, we're over logical. You know, we tend to be like problem solvers. And I've said this before, like one sentence that changed my life is not a problem to solve. It's an adventure to live. So when we involve like what God has gifted us with naturally, made us like logical, he's made us like problem solving. When we let that overflow into like other areas in our life where it shouldn't be, like having, the relationship with God, a lot of times guys complicate that.
Yeah.
Guys see it as like a problem to solve. Like, okay, what do I have to do right now to be able to be in a relationship with God later? Or what do I have to set up now to be able to experience that later? When really it's really as simple as like, okay, God, I'm feeling a certain way today.
Yeah.
I'm just having like simple communication, and it's that simple. And that's a really big thing that I really want to like, we were talking about like a men's group earlier as well.
Yeah.
We had a lot of conversation before this, but just starting a men's group and being able to minister to guys like that, because I feel like there's so many people that don't really understand why that they're made the way that they are, and where to like place it, where to direct how they were made, and where to not have it, where to not have that over logical place, where to have moments where you can be open and intimate, and and marriage helps a lot with that too. Like having your better half that always sharpens you as a person, making you open. Like you have to be emotionally open. You have to be emotionally there. You can't just shut it off, be logical, and think about everything. And that's another. I think God made it that way for a reason. Like he made women to show guys like how emotional he can be. How his emotional side can be. Yeah.
And it's something like a quote that was resonating with me while you're talking about was that was like I heard it recently. It was God, I don't know where you're taking me, but my answer is already yes. So having the heart posture of like I already say yes before I know what's going on, because that's how much I trust you. Like that's how much I want to be obedient to you. That's how much I care about your plan greater than mine. Right. And it's like you're saying, like relationships with men is so broken these days.
Yeah.
Because we have been taught to be so hard, taught to be so unemotional, and like the strongest men are actually the most soft men.
Yeah.
The ones who are the most vulnerable and the most open, they're the softest. I mean, that's how Jesus was. To me, that's the hardest man on earth.
Yeah.
He literally, and when I say hardest, I mean like that's the only role model I ever want to look to as a man. Yeah. I don't ever want to look to another man and say that's who I want to be, because that's putting your identity and your fleshly desires in human form, in earthly things, in flesh. And the flesh will always fail you. And I feel like that's the biggest problem with church and religion nowadays is a lot of church and scriptures have been twisted into man-made fairy tales.
For sure.
And that's not how God ever meant for this to be. And we're in a time, a transition period where God is about to, you and I talked about this, like God's opening up a lot of eyes to the realness of Jesus, the realness of his love, and the realness of his authenticity. And the ones that aren't being obedient, they're gonna have a downfall. And it's one of these things that I don't want to have a downfall, man, because I've got that fear of the Lord, and that's what people are lacking, is a fear of the Lord. They're fearing, oh, am I going to make my next bill payment? Okay, if God can provide for the birds and everything else, why can't he provide for you?
Right.
Why are you so worried about something that God already promised you in Scripture that you can't even have that bit of faith? Like Matthew 17:20. Therefore, I tell you, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can move this mountain from here to there. Nothing will be impossible for you. You know how big a mustard seed is? Tiny, bro. But it's one of the biggest growing plants once it's grown.
Yeah.
Because of that faith, it's going to sprout into fruits of harvest because of your faith for him.
So when it does come to, you were saying you have pretty much your role model is Jesus. Like you don't want to have any other role model besides Jesus. But, we also have to have pretty much what you do. Like we have to have mentors in our life. I think it's especially important for mentors to have mentors in their life. You always have to have somebody. It just has to trickle down. You have to have somebody pouring into you so you can pour into somebody else. So, like, do you have a mentor right now?
Yeah. Okay. So I definitely agree in that aspect of like you have to have someone else sharpening your sword. Like
Right.
Iron sharpens iron,
Yeah.
for sure.
So when you are looking for a mentor, because you want to have the characters of Jesus, and you said Jesus is like your role model, what characteristics do you look for when looking for a role model? For somebody that may be listening and is in the field of having the want of mentorship, where do you go for that, or what characteristics do you look for? What stands out to you to get mentored by a person like that?
Yeah, I think discernment is the number one thing, bro. It's one of these things that if you can truly ask God for him to put the mentor that you need in your life, like he will provide. He will. And it's one of these things that I look for people with faith. I look for people with boldness. I look for people who aren't scared to be real, who aren't scared to break the norm of society and say something that normal would be like basically crucified for,
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Is like, it's one of these things that you need to look for a mentor that is truly surrendered their entire life to Christ, is not willing to give in to the enemy's lies. And even if they do, like, it's one of these things that they know it. They know that they're going down a slippery slope, but they're able to stop it.
Because they're still human.
Yeah.
They're not gonna be Jesus themselves.
Exactly. So it's like, we're humans, we're gonna fail, but it's like learning when you're starting to go down that path and how to turn it around from that situation. Because that's the hardest part.
Yeah.
Is like, okay, I'm going down a slippery slope right now. How do I get out of this? And a lot of people will say that, but they won't follow through with it. They'll keep going down that path.
Yeah.
And that's where that transition period, it's like a trauma cycle, basically. You just go down this spiral, and it's something in my past relationship I learned is like, I kept going down in this downward spiral because I wasn't healed properly yet. And I had to realize that, and I had to face it head on.
Yeah.
And so like, I would definitely just encourage people to look for people who have been through the ringer, who have been through hell and back, who have been through situations, and they've chosen joy, they've chosen peace, they've chosen kindness, self-love, patience, kindness, all the fruits of the Spirit.
Yeah.
Because those are the most influential worldly people.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good, bro. I would definitely agree with that. I think another big thing, you don't want to take, if you're looking for money or advice for money, you're not going to take advice from a homeless person.
Yeah.
So don't go to somebody that has no idea what this walk is like.
Yeah.
Don't go to somebody that has never walked the talk, Go to people that have the experience, like you said.
Yeah.
Find people that you can look up to. Like, I think for me, I've had a little bit of a hard situation finding mentorship because I'm looking for like the perfect mentor that has like the business side, the entrepreneur side, the Christian side, the faith side. I'm looking for the whole package.
Yeah.
And right now, like I'm having like a realization moment. Like, I'm not going to have the whole thing in one person, So that's really something that the God has been ministering to me, is like, it's not going to be all what you're expecting. It's not going to all be like right in front of your face. And here's the magical person that you've been wondering and imagining in your head, So I think for me personally, like, mentorship is important. I have been mentored before, and it's been a while. It really has. But I know that it's been on my heart to get mentorship lately, because I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of in a season right now of transition. I feel like, I don't know. And there's been transition in my life. I feel like ever since I've met God, but it just doesn't stop. It's always like level after level after level.
It's a never ending video game, bro.
It's a never ending video game. People say we're playing this simulation, but with God, it really is like a game. Like, how you going to get to the next level? Like, I'm taking you to new places now.
And God's that cheat code.
Opening the doors. But I think mentorship it's something that I'm wanting right now.
Yeah.
My soul is wanting to get poured into right now. And it takes a lot of humbleness to be able to go in a state like that.
Yeah.
And I think it's very easy for guys, especially, and maybe some women. I've met some women like this too, but it's very easy for guys, I'll speak for guys, to be able to put their pride up against that before they'll ever humble themselves and say, like, okay, I need somebody else to help me in the situation.
Yeah.
And with the talk about like the relationship with men, and it is so absent these days. And I feel like over the years, I've read this book about men and how the world has kind of domesticated us to be a certain way and like quiet, like we're caged, they're quiet, we're trained, we won't make loud noises, you know. The world has kind of domesticated us in that way. And I think over the years, the world has done such a good job at showing us that we are not needed. We're not important. And the most valuable thing for a man is to feel important, to feel like he's needed. You know, we need this man to come lift this thing, or we need a man brain to come figure this out. You know, that's where we feel like the most needed. We feel like the most valuable in those moments. And I think the world has done such a good job of showing us like we can deconstruct everything and show you that you're actually not needed. Yeah. And over the years, we just kind of fell apart, kind of broke apart. Yeah. And my heart is there, like with you. Like I want to build that back up, man. Like I want to have guys where we can like have actual relationship and talk about like real stuff and feel like we're valued and needed. And, you know, it doesn't have to be like what the world shows us. You know, we can bring that into our relationships, our marriages, and other relationship with guys. You know, so I think we should definitely figure something out with that, bro.
Yeah, I think a men's group would be amazing, bro. I know we were talking about it earlier, just starting a men's group. I just feel like it's so heavy right now to do that because there's so many men are just silenced because the devil's lies just constantly just running through their mind. And that's what the devil does, steal, kill, and destroy. So if he can destroy men, he can destroy a lot of God's strongest soldiers. But I also feel like this is a season where God is building up a lot of women in the kingdom. This is just a season where it takes a strong woman to also build up a man to bring him back to his reality, right? And so it's for me, it's funny. A lot of my clients are actually women. And I didn't think it was going to be that way. I thought it was going to be, okay, I'm going to help a lot of men. Right. Let's roll. Yeah. But bro, it's been so rewarding to see women be uplifted in the kingdom. Yeah. And to see them step into their power and to realize what they have and to no longer settle and to start pouring into their own families because of that. But it takes strong men to help show women who they are deep down. Yeah. It takes a warrior of a Christian man to help a woman to lead her to her promised land. Yeah, it's a balance. It really is. Like the man has to play his part, the woman has to play her part. And I think men too, like can fall very guilty of this. Like I know I have, like speaking from experience, like men can fall very guilty of like how powerful a woman's voice actually is. Yeah. Women's voice are so powerful in a marriage. You can build up the man just by telling him like, you're doing a great job. Yeah, that's all. That's all he needs. Like, dude, all right, I'm gonna keep doing that. Heck yeah, I'm doing a good job. Yeah, we're very simple beings, you know. Guys are not complicated. All we need is respect. Yeah, literally, that's like, literally all we need is respect, and you will have a man who loves you endlessly. That's it. And not respect in a way like I'm demanding this. Yeah, you know, it's more of just like. How low can I go for you? Yeah. I mean, we learned this at the marriage conference. This guy explained the picture of that verse, like husbands are supposed to love their wives as Christ loves the church. And also like wives are supposed to like, you know, I forget the verse, but it's pretty much like it talking about marriage. And he pretty much represented it as like, how low can I go for you? Yeah. Like, oh, you can do this, but I can actually do this for you and I can do that for you. And the wife is saying, well, I can go even lower than that, you know? So how low can you go for the other person? It's pretty much, it's just a game of how low can you go? Wow. And that's the ultimate respect. Yeah. That's the ultimate version of respect. That's such a good word. What would you say like your biggest challenge in your marriage has been? Man, we have faced a lot of challenges. We are 3 years in it. Oh, I got that right. 3 years, I believe. Edit. If I'm wrong, I'll cut that out. Maybe. Yeah, we have walked through a lot. Like I was talking to somebody at work the other day, just talking about like our struggles that we've gone through. Like we used to be like the people in the next door apartment that you hated and wanted to call the cops on because we're yelling, we're breaking doors and stuff, you know, like we were that couple. And we walked through a lot of hurt as well. We walked through a lot of scales that we had to take off. But I think, I don't know what would be the hardest thing. I think communication is always going to be on the top of the list. Yeah. I'm trying to think a little more personal. What about like your personal history growing up? Like, did that affect you at all? Like your trauma growing up as a kid? For sure. Yeah. I think I didn't really know what intimacy looked like. Yeah. And
again, going like back to my parents, I love my parents. I think they did an amazing job. But every time they fought, it was behind doors. I didn't know what communication looked like.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to communicate properly. So like when something did arise, it was like I'm reacting instead of responding. And it always turned out bad. It never went in my favor, obviously. Like that's always going to end you up in a bad situation. So that was a really big thing that I had to learn, is how to communicate. Well, not even how to communicate, how to respond instead of react.
Yeah.
Because it is always like, and like you said, like guys kind of have that natural demeanor, like I need the respect.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that. I didn't know that about myself. I didn't know that God actually made me that way. I thought that was just like, I'm the man, you need to respect me, you know, and I need this done. And that's kind of how I treated it, you know, at first. And, you know, what guy isn't? You know, we're made how we're made. But I think communication, definitely a big one, how to respond instead of react. And then also how to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
You know, because that's another thing like I never saw growing up, is how to be vulnerable. I didn't really have vulnerable conversations until I was maybe graduated.
Yeah.
Never had a vulnerable conversation.
I'm right there with you, man.
Yeah. So like it was very, it was foreign. It was a complete different language for me.
Yeah.
And now it's like I can't stop doing it.
Dude, it's wild. It's funny because I always like intimacy equals intimacy. So you see into me.
Yeah.
That's intimacy.
Yeah.
And for me, like that's the key in any relationship. And that's what Jesus is about. It's like intimacy with him creates an intimacy with other people. So when you are intimate with God, like you're able to open your hearts to places where you can open your heart to more people as well. Because he's shown you, like, with you being vulnerable with him, it makes it easier to be vulnerable with other people.
Yeah.
Because while yes, people might let you down with that vulnerability, he won't. But yeah,
there's a lot that you learn in just the silence of sitting with God. And that's something that we were talking about last night with Abe and Trish. Is something that they've been practicing is silence. Like literally,
love Abe, by the way.
He's an amazing guy. We're definitely gonna have him here eventually. I don't know when, but they're in the parenting season. But something that they've been practicing is literally sitting in silence for like 15 minutes. No phone, no driving, no thinking. Like literally, just what does God have for me?
Yeah. And
what is He gonna bring up in this situation? And I think in those moments, like, that's way better than any praying session, way better than any book that you can read. Like, you're getting to the core root of stuff that can be brought up to you. The way that God speaks to me is like very visual.
Yeah.
Very, He speaks to me in dreams, speaks to me in visions, pictures,
I remember
stuff like that.
Like at retreat, you would always wake up. First thing you do is journal your dreams.
Yeah,
I remember that.
I still do it.
Yeah.
I still journal my dreams. And I actually read the dream that I had at the retreat not too long ago.
That's wild.
That was a wild dream. It was a crazy dream. But yeah, that's how God speaks to me, man. And I feel honored. Like every time I do wake up from a dream, and that's why I write it down. I'm like, dang, like God's speaking to me. That's dope, dude.
Yeah.
Like it's so cool. Like, and it's such in a cool and creative way. Like I'm able to like break it down and see like, what is this? What can this maybe represent in my life? And I just love it. You know, it's a very honoring feeling to be able to wake up and be like, that was actually God speaking to me.
Yeah.
But that's how He speaks to me. And when I'm able to, one thing that I said last night with Abe, like, I feel like if I were to practice the silence, it's going to help me decipher like what's my creativity and what's God's creativity, and be able to split them. Like if I'm sitting in silence and I get like visions or pictures or whatever the case may be, like I can know like God's actually talking to me right now.
Yeah.
And it's not my own mind or my own will in this situation. Like there's a moment where I can actually just listen to what God's trying to say.
Yeah. That's so good.
Yeah. Silence, man. Like, and how often do we sit in silence?
Yeah.
You know, like in such a busy world, like, and that's another thing that I learned at prison, dude, like just to slow down because they took their time, bro. When I say, I almost got a little annoyed when they took their time, bro. We had like a 2-hour service, maybe like 10 songs of worship. I was like, okay, we're still going. All right.
Let's roll.
Everybody's still going. It was wild. And as they were going up there, they're taking their time speaking. And I'm just like,
you're over there sweating bullets.
Dude, I was nervous, bro. That was the biggest crowd I've ever spoken in front of.
Proud of you, man. That's big time.
It felt natural, you know.
That's good.
It felt good. It was just an amazing experience.
Yeah.
You can't put it into words, bro.
Yeah.
Like you have to experience it. I would love for you to come with me next time. Like you could definitely like speak too. Like if you wanted
to. I am so game.
They want they want that. Like, they want an experience.
I'm there.
Like, they want people to come. They want people to speak. Like, bro, it's amazing.
It's one of those things, man, where I'm at the point in my life where I'm done hiding. I'm done hiding my voice. I'm done hiding my story. I'm done hiding my identity. Who's saved me? Who's helped me? Because I feel like so many people like are so scared to get crucified for calling themselves Christians. But especially in the USA, like we're so free compared to people outside of the US in our Christianity. So like we need to take advantage of that. We need to be the voices for the people who don't have voices. You know, and it's one of those things that it's all about your heart posture, man. It's if your heart posture is not right, what you're doing is not going to be in line with God, and that's what that silence creates is that correct heart posture.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
So it's just really that alignment, that divine alignment that God gives you in that quiet time. Is just His word, His voices, His ideas, His visions, not yours. Because when we put it into play, it's always going to fail us.
Yeah.
But when He gives us the next steps, it's like walking through fog, right? You can't see in front of you, but you trust where you're going because you know where you're going.
Yeah.
At the end, you know where you're going. But you just have to hold His hand and follow each step He gives you.
Yeah.
It's that simple. But like, I have a question for you. Like if someone's trying to find or like how they communicate with God, what advice would you give them for like finding that gift or like calling or how they listen to Him?
I think there's a lot that goes into play with this because there's a lot of soul searching that you have to do to like actually find out who you are. And you have to be able to decipher like what is the world's voice and what is going to be God's voice, because what the world wants us to stay in is a state of confusion, a state of overthinking, a state of, well, what's next? How am I going to pay bills? You know, all this stuff. So like we really have to like break down and really do some soul searching. Like, and it's easier said than done. Is that easier said than done?
Yeah.
Easier said than done. I thought I said that backwards. Yeah, it's easier said than done, you know, to do soul searching. But you really have to have that kind of commitment to yourself to be able to sit down and find out like who you actually are, like how you actually work, how you think, how you respond, how God has made you like as a person, because you're very unique. Every person's very unique. If you have a different fingerprint to somebody else, you're different. You have a different way of thinking. So I think it takes that. It takes being able to find out who you are as a person so you can decipher those two things. What is the world's view? What is my view? How has God viewed me? And also like in the word too, like reading scripture, memorizing scripture, even just having like maybe worship songs that have scripture in it. You know, you're getting God's voice into that. And slowly, it takes time. You know, it's never going to be an instant thing. And I don't know, maybe sometimes it's different for people. It just, you really have to like have that, the time of being able to listen, and just like the silence, you know, you have to find time to be able to set aside, to be able to hear from him. I mean, if you're like busy doing your weekly schedule, always going to work, you always have something in front of you, you know, you don't have time for God.
Yeah.
God's he's not going to interrupt you. You know, you have to actually set time aside. So I think it takes that. I think it takes having the discipline of actually wanting to search out and find out who He is and find out what His voice sounds like.
Yeah.
And right now, I'm still figuring it out. Like, I think I'm reading a book right now. It's called The Art of Hearing the Father.
Yeah.
And it talks about how we have to tune in to the right radio station pretty much.
Yeah.
Because God is always talking. It's never ending. Like, God is always there. People always say God is omnipresent. And God is always talking. We just have to tune into the right radio station. And it's not something that we have to be like, okay, God, I'm ready. You can go ahead. You know, we just have to tune in. It's already there.
Yeah. And I think I want to touch on like your to-do list. Because one thing I've really learned lately is like, we're human beings, not human doings. Mm-hmm. So it's one of these things like we have to just be. And like being is like sometimes just being still.
That's good.
Being silent, being quiet, and just feeling His love, you know? But I feel like the biggest problem these days is people's identity. Mm-hmm. I feel like that's why they can't hear the voice of God, is because they're so caught up in a different identity. Yeah. That it's not in alignment with God, so He can't properly communicate to you because you're looking to all these outside sources or humanly things that He can't talk to you through, right? And it's just like you're saying, like you've got to find that soul first. Mm-hmm. You got to find that identity in your soul. And all you have to do is ask Jesus for that. Yeah. And He will gift it to you. The only thing He will freely give you is wisdom. Ask for wisdom and He will grant it to you.
That's good.
because it's a never ending rope. Like if you ask for wisdom, it's going to lead back to him every single time. That's why it's freely given, right? Because wisdom is one of the gifts that can lead you to anywhere you want to go.
Yeah.
But it has to be the correct heart posture in your mind. Like it's not give me wisdom so I can be the smartest man on earth and get all this money. It's give me wisdom so that I can do your will for my life.
Yeah. To make it simple, like for, maybe there's a listener out there that is at the very ground base, at the very, like, I don't even know God.
Yeah.
I don't even, like, what is the Bible? Or like, what is, I don't even know a characteristic of God. I don't even know what you guys are talking about. To make it simple, it really just starts the conversation. Because what relationship do you have without having communication? And that's really all God wants. Everything will follow after that. Once you have a relationship with God, once you have communication with God, it all starts from there. The dominoes start falling after that. And that's the most simplest thing that I can ever tell a guy, especially. I can't really speak for women because it gets pretty sticky. There's a lot of this way. And I'm going on this emotional stuff. Yeah, all this. But for guys, we're simple beings. We're simple dudes. Just start talking. It's as simple as like talking to God, even if it sounds weird. Talking to God in your car, like by yourself, like how your day has been, how you've been feeling. Like you're tired today. Like talk to God about it. Yeah. It's simple. It doesn't have to be something that's complicated where you have to put in like this amount of work to actually start hearing God. Like I didn't want to make it seem like it's that kind of sound, that it's that kind of work, and it's really simple. It's just communication.
Yeah. And it's funny because we were talking about communication earlier. So it all just leads back to communication. At the end of the day, it's like how well you communicate with God is how well you'll communicate with others.
Yeah.
So the better that communication with God is, the better your communication with not only yourself, but other people gets.
Yeah.
So communication starts with self. You have to know how to love and treat yourself and talk to yourself. Yeah. And that comes from God, because that's where self-love is. And that's the biggest thing I've seen in people is like they lack self-love because they lack a relationship with Jesus. And it's, I don't know why, but identity is just on my mind. And like, I just feel like so many people are lost in the identity, lost in confusion, lost in principles of religion that just aren't in alignment with who God is and how the Bible was created.
It's how the world is right now, man. And unfortunately, it's sad to say, but it's only going, it's a very slippery slope downhill right now for people that are in that kind of field. Like, and one thing that me and Lex talked about on a previous episode was anxiety grows in the fence or on the line between what is true and what is not true. So when you're standing in between what is true and not true, anxiety has the ability to grow. And when you go further and further away from what's not true, anxiety grows. And good. I think when people are in this confused state, they're in this state of like, I don't even know where to start.
Yeah.
Like I feel like the weight of the world is on my shoulders. Everything is going wrong in my life. I can't ever do anything right. Those lies are just building up. Yeah. And confusion is exactly where, the enemy wants you to be. The world wants you to be. If we can be confused, then we're silent.
Yeah.
If we can be confused, then we're stagnant. We're not going to do our callings.
Yeah.
And we have to know the truth. We have to know what is true in our lives. We have to know what God has spoken. We have to know the things that we're called to be able to walk in that truth and not have anxiety that rules our life.
Yeah. Anxiety's a big one, man, because it's just one of these things that like if it doesn't bring you peace, love, or joy, it's not from Jesus. And that's where people get confused. Yeah. Because they start having these negative thoughts, and that's where I was talking about that spiral earlier. Mm-hmm. Thoughts create, thinking destroys. When you have a thought, it can be good or bad, but the thinking that comes after that is what elevates you or negates you. So it's controlling the thinking from that thought. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's all about being so in tune with yourself that you know when thought is good or bad for you mentally.
Yeah.
So it's all about, like, that's how you overcome anxiety, is realizing that there's an enemy prowling around trying to control your mind, trying to control your thoughts. And so if you give him that space, he's gonna do it.
Yeah.
He's gonna do it. If you leave that crack open in the door, he's gonna slam that door open. But if you leave the door closed, and he's not gonna mess with you, man.
Yeah.
He will at some point, but you have the choice to say yes or no. And it's all a choice at the end of the day, but we're not perfect. We're not made to be perfect. There's only one person who's made to be perfect.
Yeah.
So we're going to have downfalls. We're going to have times where we're beating ourselves up or getting anxious or getting sad. And there's so many people out there who are sad, but they're not depressed, but they claim it as depression. And when you talk about depression and you say this over yourself, oh, I'm depressed, you're giving the enemy ground to make you actually depressed.
Yeah.
Instead of like realizing this is just an emotional moment. I'm just sad right now.
Yeah.
This moment will pass. Like feelings are meant to be felt and then released.
Yeah.
Not meant to be held on to.
That's so good.
You know?
You have to be very careful on what you label things that you're going through. I'm very like I almost never, it's not even about my vocabulary, because you hear people say all the time, oh, I'm struggling with this. No. You're experiencing this.
Yes.
You're walking through this. You're not struggling, my friend. If anybody's listening, rip that out of your vocabulary.
Please.
Because that's a hard thing. That's such a harsh label. The things that you walk through are not always going to be a struggle.
Yeah.
You can always have victory in situations in life. Like right now, I'm walking through how to not have the weight of the world on my shoulders. I'm walking through what stress management looks like. With like work and business and podcasts and all the stuff that's going on during the week, I'm walking through what that looks like. I'm not struggling with it.
Yeah.
If struggling means you need help, you can't get out of it. You know, struggling like you're trying to get out of mud or something. I'm walking through it, and I think that's so big. Like you really have to be careful what you label things as. The power of life and death is in the tongue, and you really have to take that to heart.
Yeah,
because it's important. It's so important, the things that you say.
Yeah, it's also very important to what you watch and hear. Just as important. Because it's one of those things like you have to keep guard to your eyes, your mouth, and your ears, and your tongue. Because it's like what you consume is what you become. So if you're consuming all these rap songs, all these fear-driven movies, horror movies, you're going to eventually become those things. Yeah. You're going to eventually be scared of every little thing because of that movie. You're going to eventually start not being able to control your tongue because you hear it nonstop. Yeah. And it's a lot of these songs nowadays are driven in a lot of sinful nature, and it's just going to draw you closer to that sin. Yeah. Whereas God calls you to be pure and holy, and that's not what those things are bringing you closer to. So it's important to not only watch what you say, but watch what you hear, watch what you listen, and watch what you see. Yeah.
That's so good. Yeah. Yeah. We are at 52 minutes right now, so I think we'll probably start wrapping this up.
Dang, man, this was fun.
This is awesome, dude. I think there was a lot of golden nuggets that were dropped in here. I think it was really dope. This went, obviously, we were talking before, like, I'm cool with whatever. Let's freestyle. Let's go, I think it went just as I imagined it to go, even better. Yeah. Like, this is a great conversation.
I agree, man.
I'm glad you came over, bro. Thank you so much for sacrificing the time to do this. This just reminded me of the relationship that we do have. Like it's instant. We don't have to try to like, okay, let's catch up to see where we've been. Yeah. It's instant, bro. Yeah. And I love that about you. I appreciate the way that you carry yourself, the way that you always go to the source immediately besides anything else. And I thank you. I thank you for being an example of that. And I'm excited that you have so many people that you can reach in the ministry that you're doing with this mentorship. It's very exciting stuff.
Yeah. Thank you, bro, for just opening up a safe space for men and just people to just talk about what God has done for them. And I think it's very important what you're doing too, man. It's like you said, like a brotherhood that was formed immediately, and family. Like no matter how long you've seen each other, like you just feel like your family. No matter how long you go without talking, no matter how long you go without seeing each other, it's always gonna be family. So you're always family to me, man. And I really just honor you and value you for just even considering me to be on this thing. And I hope that this just touches people, man. And I pray that it just blesses people. It helps people walk through and get delivered of things that the devil has been just taunting them with, just holding over their head. Like you don't have to give in to the lies of the enemy. And I know Jonathan's vision and goal with this is to help people find their identity in Jesus through this podcast, and to help people walk through the trials and tribulations that he has. And know that you can become successful on the other side of it.
Yeah. What I really want people to know, and my message to the world, my message for me, something that I live by now, is God is only as creative as you allow him to be. And I think we allowed the creativity to be spontaneous in this episode, which I love. And I think we shine some light in a lot of areas that maybe people have questions on, a lot of corners and cracks that can be revealed in people's lives. And I really hope some guy on here that is still listening right now got touched by this message. Because if you're still here, if you received anything from this, if you picked up any golden nugget from this episode, then this episode was directly for you. So thank you for listening. Thank you everybody, like everybody that listens on a consistent basis. I really do appreciate you guys. Me and Lex, we do this because we love it. This is just a passion that we have. This isn't something that we do because we want to be rich. We want to be, some influencers or something. Like, this is actually just like a passion. We actually just love doing this. We love pouring into people. We just love deep communication, deep talks and stuff like that. So I just want you guys to know my heart. And this is like open conversation. This is something that I want to be spontaneous. Like I said, God is only as creative as you allow him to be, and I want to show that through this podcast. So,
and I think I just want to touch on this one more thing. Like, you keep saying spontaneous, and if you think about it, Jesus was so spontaneous. He literally was the most spontaneous person you could ever imagine. Like, he would walk from place to place to do miracle after miracle so spontaneously. Just because someone told him. It's like, hey, this person needs healing. This person needs to not be blind anymore. Like, this person's dead. We need help. And he's like, okay. And he just drops everything and he goes and does it.
Like, all right, bet, I'm on the way.
It's like the spontaneousness is like a real Christian, because they're able to just do anything on the fly because they know where the power comes from. Right.
That's so good, bro.
I love you, bro. I'm so thankful for this, man.
Thank you, dog. I appreciate you. We'll see you guys next time. Next post or next episode. I'm not sure what it's going to be quite yet. I've stopped labeling the episodes now because it's all mixed up now, and now I have to like redo some stuff. So I'm just going to stop labeling them. So I don't know what episode number this is. This might be actually 50, if I'm not mistaken. But I don't know. Like I said, it's all mixed up right now. But thank you guys for listening. Until then, see things from a higher view. We love you guys, and we'll see you guys soon. Peace out.
Peace.
Yeah.
That was dope.